Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. This one should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be going over about 7 or 8 players that I think are being drafted outside of the top 150. That was the criteria here. So typically going undrafted in a lot of leagues that I think have a lot of upside to be really valuable for us in fantasy and that I think are going to be pretty popular waiver wire pickups over the course of the season. This is just an opportunity for you guys to sort of, take this advice, get ahead of your league, make sure your last round draft pick is one of these guys that you're beating the waiver wire ahead of week 1 and 2. It should be a lot of fun. Of course, these guys all have their warts. They're not necessarily just destined for greatness, right? Because if they were, then they would not be being drafted outside of the top 150. But they're guys that I all like for one reason or another and that I think have quite a bit of upside. So let's get into it. And then if you have any other players that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments. Any questions, let me know there. I love interacting with you guys. It's part of what makes this super fun. So I have to mention him. Anthony Richardson was the most clear-cut candidate for me here at the quarterback position. I understand that he can't stay healthy and he's probably bad at football, but for fantasy football, we don't necessarily care about that, right? Like we've seen Justin Fields bounce around the league so far on his third team now. Has never really earned himself a clear role as a starting quarterback in the NFL. But when Justin Fields starts, he ends up being really good for fantasy football, and I think we can say the same thing about Anthony Richardson here. Every single week that Anthony Richardson starts for the Colts, there is a chance that he finishes that week as the quarterback one, and if he were to be able to somehow string together 17 straight healthy games, I bet he can finish as a top 5 quarterback. So there are very few quarterbacks that have as much upside as Anthony Richardson, and with your last pick, I think we definitely want to capture that wide range of outcomes. There have been a lot of reports this offseason that he is seeming like he's taken a step forward. We didn't really see that in week 1 of the preseason. He played about 3 or 4 snaps and then just got walloped on a sack, dislocated his pinky. I didn't play beyond that, but it sounds like he might be ready for the next preseason game. And we'll see if he can still come out there and win the starting job. And if he does, I think there's a chance that Anthony Richardson potentially leveled up. And if he did, Anthony Richardson could just hold on to the starting job all year and be really good for fantasy. He's currently being drafted as the quarterback 29 as well, right? So he's being drafted behind guys like Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. Both those guys dealing with injuries of their own and have no real upside for fantasy. So, why would you ever draft them? Because there's no chance that you're going to be wanting to start them. So, I understand that he's probably not going to pan out. The odds here are extremely low, but if you're drafting him as your second quarterback just to wait and see what happens early in the season, the upside is legitimately there. And, if he's not the starter week 1, you cut him. If he's the starter week 1 and he throws 4 interceptions and gets benched, you cut him. But if he is the starter week 1 and he goes out there and throws for 200 and runs for 80 and has 2 scores, you're going to be really stoked if you have him on your roster. So just don't forget about him. The upside's there, and I don't want him just to get completely buried on draft boards. Next up, it's going to be Jackery Krosky Merritt. Congrats to you if you actually know who I'm talking about here. JCM, I'm going to call him that because it's a lot easier to say than his full name, was drafted in the 7th round by the Commanders and has been turning heads all offseason. There have been a lot of reports that he clearly looks like the most explosive running back on the roster, and just from a pure physical metric standpoint, that's not shocking, right? He's got a 95th percentile burst score, and his competition for touches in this backfield, there's nobody there that really scares you. You've got Brian Robinson, who's pretty average, right? Brian Robinson's a fine player, but there's nothing special about him that just guarantees him a role. And there's Austin Eckler, who looked good last year, but he's older, coming off another injury. I think there's at least a path here for JCM to potentially emerge as being a legitimate factor into this backfield. And one of the things we want to target in fantasy is great offenses with ambiguous backfields, and I think the Bills certainly fits here. There is at least a path for JCM to show out and be the best running back on this roster, end up being the starting running back for a team in Washington, which let's face it, Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler probably aren't on the roster next year. I mean that about both of them. So what you're seeing there is that if they probably want to take a look and see what they have for the future at the running back position, I think JCM's got a chance to at least be given an opportunity there. And if he could take advantage of that, there's a lot of upside here. Again, he's an explosive player in an ambiguous backfield on a great offense. He's completely buried in drafts right now. You don't even need to draft him really, but I think he's at least worth a look as a last round draft pick. And just keep an eye on him because I wouldn't be shocked if he gets 6-7 carries week 1, ends up going for 5 yards a carry. Just looks like the best back. And if we end up seeing his workload steadily increase over the course of the season, and on top of that, Brian Robinson and Eckler have both had their injury concerns over the past couple of years. But one of those guys goes down, I think JCM will immediately factor into the backfield a lot more, and he could legitimately be good for fantasy. So just keep an eye on him. We've got another player that you guys probably aren't very familiar with, but Ollie Gordon absolutely needs to be talked about. We've seen the Dolphins provide value for multiple running backs in the past. Just go back to 2023. You had Raheem Mostert finish as the running back 2. Devon Achane also finished inside the top 10 at the position. So this is a backfield that can clearly give us a lot of fantasy production, and I think there's room for another back outside of Devon Achane. I think it's really clear that they don't want to be giving Devon Achane the goal line work. They tried that last year. He was 3 for 15 in terms of converting carries inside the 5-yard line into touchdowns. That is horrendous. I love Devon Achane. He's a fantastic player, really great pass catcher, going to be really good for fantasy. But the Dolphins would be wise to look to use a second running back in this offense. There were a lot of reports all offseason long about how great Alexander Madison was looking in training camp, like he was going to have a role as that goal line guy, and he just went down for the season with a neck injury. You really hate to see that, and but with that, that opens up a huge opportunity here for Ollie Gordon. Jalen Wright, the only other competition for touches here in this backfield. Jalen Wright just is not it. He hasn't looked good since he's entered the league. I don't buy it. He's also more of an explosive like speed back than Ollie Gordon, so he doesn't really profile as the kind of guy that you're going to be giving that goal line work to anyway. So I think Ollie Gordon's got a great shot to be legitimately involved in what could be a really great offense here in Miami. He was incredibly productive in college as well, and it just didn't really work out for him. He sort of fell off. He had a really great start to his college career. A lot of people thought he was going to be a high draft pick in the NFL. Had a couple down years after his hot start, and then just, ended up being drafted late in 7th round by the Dolphins. But I think this is a good fit here. He looked good in week 1 of the preseason. I think that Ollie Gordon is going to have a role, and if something were to happen to Achane, I think Ollie Gordon would probably be the starting running back over Jalen Wright, and I think there's just a clear path to value here for Gordon, and he's definitely someone that we need to keep an eye on this season. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I want to highlight Kyle Williams. He was drafted in the 3rd round by the New England Patriots, and I think he's going to immediately start the season as their primary deep threat, should operate as that X wide receiver right out of the gate, and I think we all expect as a fantasy community and as an NFL community for Drake May to take a step forward, and if he does that, there's going to be value in this wide receiver room, whether that's Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, could be Kayshon Boutte, could be Kyle Williams. There's certainly plenty of names that it could turn out being, but the reality here is there's nobody there that just stands out as like the clear-cut favorite to win the job. With that being the case, that means that Kyle Williams has a path towards being the number 1 alpha wide receiver in this offense if he ends up being good. And from all the film I've watched of Kyle Williams, he looks legitimately good. He's an elite athlete. He's going to get downfield. He can certainly create separation. And those are two things that Stephon Diggs at his current age cannot do. Stephon Diggs can be a nice move the chains kind of guy, but if you're looking for an explosive player in this offense, it's Kyle Williams. I think that upside is there. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 69 off the board, so he's basically free right now. I think he's got a great chance to emerge and be super relevant, and he's one of my favorite super late round draft picks because I think you can draft him, stash him on your bench. It's probably not going to happen week 1. But I think he'll operate as the clear starting wide receiver right away, and I think we're going to see him get more and more involved in the offense as the season progresses, and he's going to end up being pretty valuable over the back half of the year. Well, this one kind of makes me want to vomit, but I felt like I had to mention him. I think Deontay Johnson is a guy that we need to at least not completely forget about. We know he's talented, right? Like, we've seen him be incredibly valuable for fantasy in the past. Even last year, to start the season in Carolina, he was the clear wide receiver 1 in that offense. It was really dominating target share, and when he got traded, that's when the whole thing fell apart, right? He got traded to the Baltimore Ravens, got disgruntled, didn't want to go out on the field for them. Just his entire career kind of fell off the wheels just because of that, and obviously that's not great, right? Like, these kind of players that have clearly just their head's not on straight, it's tough for these guys to stick around in the league, but all the interviews with him, he's saying he was really humbled. He admits he sort of made mistakes last season, and he's in an offense now in Cleveland, which should not be fantastic, but it's going to be one that's going to have to throw the ball a ton, right? They had led the NFL in pass attempts last season. There's no real reason to expect that to change this season. You've got Kevin Stefanski, an offensive-minded head coach, with a team that's just going to be horrendous, right? They're going to have to throw the ball because they're going to be losing, and there's no clear alpha in this wide receiver room, right? I know Jerry Jeudy broke out last season. He's had about 8 good games in his entire career. Cedric Tillman, he's had even less. He had about a 4-game stretch before he got a concussion and missed the rest of the year. Deontay Johnson is honestly the most proven wide receiver on this offense. I know there's a lot of question marks surrounding him and his role now, but it sounds very clearly like Deontay Johnson is going to start the season as the starting slot wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, and pair that with an offense that's going to have to throw the ball a ton, questionable quarterback play, so the guys that are getting targets close to the line of scrimmage, like Deontay is going to, probably are going to be a little bit more valuable. And the reality here is Deontay Johnson's being drafted as the wide receiver 99, right? He's be like the 300th pick in drafts right now. So the real question here is why not? I think it's actually possible for Deontay Johnson to finish this season as the number 1 target on the Cleveland Browns. He's still young, right? There's no reason for this to be a guy that's washed just from an age standpoint. We saw him be good for the NFL last season prior to being traded. That's why the Ravens wanted to go and trade for him. I think the upside's there. I'm not saying it's going to be a super high hit rate, but I won't be shocked if after week one, Deontay has 8 targets out of the slot in week one, ends up being a valuable asset, and he just ends up being a reliable flex option for us all season. So I just think he needs to be mentioned. He's completely buried because he just screwed up really bad last year, but I don't want to completely bury him. We know he's talented and he's got opportunity here. And finally, I want to close it out with one tight end that I apparently have to mention like 3 times a week, but Chigakonkwo. He's currently undrafted pretty much in all formats, and I really think Chigakonkwo is a guy that needs to be heavily targeted by all of us in fantasy drafts this season. We know he's a talented player just on a per-touch basis. All the explosiveness metrics, all the athleticism profiles, like this is a really athletic tight end, and that's the sort of thing that you want to be targeting in terms of a potential breakout. On top of that, he's the clear number 2 target in this offense. Like you've got Calvin Ridley, and then after that, it's like a couple of day 3 rookies, Tyler Lockett. Like Chigakonkwo should immediately slot in as the number 1 pass catcher behind Calvin Ridley. We've also got Tajay Spears already banged up, another guy that was probably going to command a decent target share out of the backfield. Like, there's just a ton of opportunity for targets here in this offense, and they're finally featuring him, right? He had 15 of 15 snaps with Cam Ward in week 1 of the preseason. So far in his career, they've sort of been using like a tight end carousel, never really just featuring him as the number 1 tight end, and they have to this year, right? Like, he's just clearly a talented player. This is an offense that's short of those, and if this offense is going to take a step forward with Cam Ward, I think Chigakonkwo is going to be a massive part of that. And he was quietly breaking out as the season ended last season as well. He had a 3-week stretch from weeks 15 to 17 where he had 10, 11, and 7 targets. It was legitimately like a league-winning tight end if you picked him up off the waiver wire and played him over those 3 weeks. Definitely could have gotten you some wins in the fantasy playoffs. I actually picked him up in my championship game and played him. Like he was legitimately good. I think he's a talented player. There's a lot of upside in this offense. There's a lot of opportunity here, and he's free in drafts right now. He's the tight end 29 off the board. So I love him there. I'm going to be drafting a ton of him. I've been drafting him all off season, and for some reason, like I expected his ADP to rise, but it just hasn't. I'm super excited about him. I want athletic tight ends in positions where they can be the number 2 target, because if that's the case, that's how you find a guy that can maybe squeak into the top 5 at the position. I'm not saying he can be a top 5 because it's just tough to do that with an offense that's not super fantastic when you're not the number 1 target, but I think he can be a top 10 guy this season. I think there is some upside for more beyond that. So that'll do it for some undrafted sleepers that I'm looking to target at the end of my drafts this season. Up next, I'm going to be doing a video series where I go over the best values on each of the platforms. So I'm going to be looking primarily at ESPN and Sleeper because those are going to be the 2 most common for you guys. I'm going to do 2 sets of videos. One where I'm just looking at ADP variations, so guys that have either significantly higher or lower ADPs on ESPN or Sleeper versus the consensus ADP. That'll just give you an opportunity to see which guys you should be targeting based off of the platform your draft is being done on. And then another one that I love doing that I'm certainly going to be doing right after that is I'm going to be going over the best auction values on each platform. So for whatever reason, these platforms aren't super great about giving us auction values that correspond to the ADP, even on their own specific platform. For example, like Derrick Henry is like the tight end or running back 6 off the board on ESPN. He ends up being like the 10th or 11th, the most expensive, just based off of pre-draft value. So that's a clear value presenting itself on ESPN. And there's a lot of examples like that, right? Like you would just expect that the guys by ADP that are supposed to be drafted later would cost less, and vice versa. That's just not necessarily true. So I'll be going over both of those platforms, telling you guys which guys you can take advantage of on your platform. And it's something that I certainly take into account whenever I'm doing my drafts. And I think it's something that a lot of people fail to acknowledge, and it's just a really huge benefit if you manage to capture that. So that'll be a lot of fun. If you guys haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's going to be that content along with a ton more coming out. Putting out at least 3 videos a week all off season long. Going to do even more than that during the regular season. Stick around all season long. We're going to win some championships together, and I think we'll have a lot of fun along the way. So I really appreciate you guys. One thing I'll mention as well, I've got a couple spots left in the subscriber league. If you're interested, let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to add you there. You're going to get that draft scheduled probably for like Labor Day weekend sometime, and it'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys. Made it this far in the video. Give it a thumbs up. That helps me out quite a bit, and I will catch you guys with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.